Howdy, hello everybody, and welcome back. In this video today, I'm going to be talking to you not only about output, but also about user input in our programs. Now, so far with our code, we've only produced output. However, user input is just as important, especially for our program. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be showing you how we can actually get user input in Python, as well as in particular, how we can get user input using the turtle module. So let's go ahead and begin. So we've created some simple code. Let's go ahead and let's start with something just like this, the hello world program. Now this is usually the first program that you end up creating whenever you are learning how to code. And if I end up running this, what's going to end up happening is in my terminal, we're going to end up having hello world printed out. Now, that is because what we ended up doing is we put this string within the print function. Now, the print function is just built into a Python, right? So you don't have to install any module. You don't have to use any module. You can literally just type out print, and then whatever you have inside these parentheses, it's going to end up printing out. So in this case, it is a string. That's what this is called. Now, very simple output, right? However, there is no input involved. So what I want to do is I want to switch things up a little bit. So let's say that I end up creating a variable, and I'm going to call it variable. The variable is going to be called name. So what I can end up doing is I can use this other built-in function. Now, what is this built-in function here? This is the input function. And what I could say is, please provide your name. Now, it's going to end up prompting us, right, for our name, and then it's going to actually save this to this variable called name. Now, one thing that I want to make very, very clear for you all, on the AP test, instead of having an equal sign to assign a value to a variable, they will use this, which is going to be looking like an arrow. And basically, it's going to be taking whatever data you are placing into this variable. It's going to have the data being pointed. It's going to use an arrow to point that data into the actual variable that we're using. Okay, so please keep that in mind. On the AP test, instead of them using the equal sign, they're going to have this arrow there. Okay, so now what we could do is we could actually end up printing this out. So what if I wanted to greet the user, right? So what if I wanted to say, hey there, and then actually put the name in here, right? Name, we can put a period at the end of this. I hope you are well, right? Now let's go ahead, let's run this. So we can click run, please provide your name. Let's put in my first name, Dylan, and this is, hey there, Dylan. Period, I hope you are well. Now, one thing that I want to point out to you all, please take note at this. So on the hey there, comma, you can see that. Then we've got outside here, comma and name. What this is doing is this is concatenating some strings. So there are 3 different strings they're concatenating, which that means that it's adding on to the end of that. Now, what I want you to notice, though, is that there was not a space in here, right? So there's no space right here, right? And there's also no space before this period. However, does everybody see how these spaces actually go in there? So that's one of the things. You can concatenate strings by using a comma like this, or what we can also do is we can use plus signs, okay? Now this is the case where all of our data types are strings. So in this case, let's go ahead and run this. So let's put in a name. Let's be Tom now. So I'm Tom. It says, hey there, Tom, I hope you are well. Now we do have an error. What is the error? There's no space right here. So if you use plus, please do take note that there's no space actually added in. If you use commas in between to concatenate strings, then it'll add in a space for you automatically. So how can we fix this? Well, we can go ahead and add in a space right here. So let's try this out again. We're going to be Tom, and then now it's saying, hey there, Tom, I hope you are well. So all is good because we have that correct space. Okay, so this is how we can end up using user input, though, to actually be able to be printed out in our terminal. Now, however, what our goal for this activity is to be able to actually use user input in Turtle. Okay, so before we get to that point, there is one thing that I want to go ahead and go over with you all, and that is data types. So let's go ahead, let's begin. What I was talking to you all about was how we might have name, right? And then I was saying that we could have a name, right? And the input function basically is going to end up saving it where it is a string. Now, this is what a string is. So let me go ahead and show you this. So I'm going to put string. So let's do this. Different data types. So we're going to put at the top here. Different data types. And then now what I want to do is I want to show you all the different data types. So strings. So let's say that we have this name. It could be Dylan. Now, do take note. I got double quotes on there, right? Now, what we could also do is we could create another variable. We could name it shirt color, and let's say that it's red. Now, in this case, do you see the difference between these? These are double quotes. This is a single quote. So those both actually work for creating strings. You can use either single quotes or double quotes. Okay. Now, this could be a single word. It could be multiple words. It could be also in between these 2 quotes, we could include numbers, right? But if we start with a double quote or a single quote, and then you end with a double quote or you end with a single quote, then that's going to end up creating a string there. Okay. Next data type I want to talk to you all about are integers. So integers, those are whole numbers, right? So we could end up going in here. We could put down age, right? Age, and you might be 38. Okay, so age in this case is going to be an integer. Okay, another example we could end up doing is, let's say, our temperature. So let's say that the temperature is exactly 45 degrees. Okay, 45 degrees Fahrenheit. This is also going to be an example of an integer. Now, you also might be thinking, well, what if there's a speed that we're traveling at that's like meters per second, and what if we're traveling 67.3 meters per second? Is that an integer? No, it is not. What that's going to be in Python is actually a float, is what we call that. So a float is anytime we just have a decimal at the end here. So what we could also end up doing, this is also a really good question, and I'm going to leave you all on a little bit of a cliffhanger here, is let's say that we're counting the amount of winners for, no, that would be something that could be a fraction. Let's say we're counting the amount of storage left on your hard drive, and let's say that you have 37.3 megabytes. Okay, no, 37.0 exactly. Okay, so 37.0 megabytes exactly. Now, what you might be wondering, well, is this an integer or is this a float? Anytime that you're unaware of something being an integer or float, there's a built-in function that I want to end up introducing you all to, and that is going to be the type function. So we could do this, and then what I can do is I can put in here storage. Now, one thing I want to talk to you about, print statement, as we were saying, or the print function, that is a built-in function. This is literally going to be your best friend for the entire semester, right? If not your entire coding career. It is always important to use the print to end up finding what kind of values you're inputting, what type of values you're dealing with, what data types you've got, or what type of variables you're dealing with. In terms of type, that's going to tell us the type of data. So it's going to be the data type of this. So what we can do is we can print this out, and although I'm telling you that it's a float, we can run it to see what data type it is if you're unsure. So as you can see that that's a float data type. What I can also do is I can throw age in here. Now if I throw age in here, you're gonna see that that's an integer, right? I could also throw in name. Now if I throw a name in there, you can end up seeing that it's str, which is string, okay? So these are three very important. I wanna introduce two more functions, or two different data types for you all as well, before we move on, and that is going to be booleans. So boolean is any time that something is true or false. So let's say if you're correct or not. So you could be correct, right? So that's true. So if I end up doing this, let's say that I end up using print, and then I use our type, so we're gonna find out the data type of the correct variable here. So if I end up running this, you're gonna end up seeing that it's bool. So boolean, remember, stands for it's either one of two states. It's either true or it's false. It's either 0 or 1. So in this case, boolean is what correct is, okay? The last data type that I want to introduce for you all are going to be lists. Now lists, it's just like groceries, right? You have the grocery list. So imagine that. Now in a list, what does the syntax of that look like? It's going to end up being where we have these brackets. Now within these brackets, what we can end up doing is we can put in different values, right? These are referenced as elements. So let's say that we need eggs, we need bread, let's say that we need milk, and then let's say that we also need cheese, for instance. Okay, so this is going to be saved as being a list. So if I end up doing print and I put in type and then I put in groceries here, I can run this, and what we're gonna end up seeing is that list is what's printed out here. Okay, so another thing that I want to mention, we could do this list example. So another thing that I want to mention for lists is that they can consist of elements that are different data types. So not only does this need to be, say, like a name, but I could also put in a value, 27. I could also put in true. I could also have some floats in here. So lists can contain multiple data types. The big take-home message is that they start with a beginning bracket, and then there's commas separating each of the values that are in there. And then what we end up doing is we've got to end it with a bracket as well for them. Okay, so those are multiple different data types. It's going to be important that we have a general basic understanding of these data types, especially for this activity. Okay, so let's go ahead, let's continue. Perfect. So let's say that we're dealing with this code right here. Now, as you can see, we've imported the turtle module in there. So we got import turtle as TRTL. I'm gonna go ahead and take this out. So I don't actually wanna have this be TRTL. I wanna just make this be T. So instead of referencing this as TRTL, I wanna use this as T. Now keep in mind, you can end up importing the turtle module as whatever you would like, right? You could put anything down on here. Now in this case, I just wanna make it T. And so anytime we're referencing that turtle module, you wanna make sure that you're using, whatever you've got here, okay? So the painter, this is the instance, right? We've got the turtle object, or the instance of a turtle. And then we got print making a circle. Now what this is telling me is that, hey, we're probably gonna end up making a circle, right? So what I can see here in this comments, we have some very wonderfully commented out code. It says, ask user for a color such as red, green, blue, pink, or purple. So we can do that. Let's go ahead and let's do that now. I wanna save a variable. Now, just like we were saying, we can use the input function, right? So let's say, please provide a color, okay? Now let's go ahead and let's take this, let's copy that. Now we've got in this next one, ask user for the radius of circle. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and paste this in here, and then I'm gonna say, please provide a number for the radius of a circle, okay? Now let's go ahead and press Control S there, we'll save, and then this is saying here, the second to last little comment, draw a circle with the radius and line color entered by the user. Now this is where we need to be very, very careful. In previous times, whenever we created a circle, we ended up putting in a value such as this, like 50, right? Now please take note, this 50 is drawn out like this. This 50 is not drawn out like this, right? In this case, this is a string. In this case, the data type that we're putting in there is an integer. Now for the circle function within the turtle module, it does need to be an integer, okay? And so what we've got to do is we got to be thinking about this. So first off, does this need to be color? No, that should be radius. Now, does this radius variable, the way that we have this set up currently, what data type is this? We want to end up using this in here, right? So we could put radius in here. However, is this the correct data type or not? Well, what data type do we need radius to be? We need it to be an integer. And so what can we end up doing? Well, can't we use a function that we were just talking about? Can't we use print? And then can't we also end up using the type function? Can't I end up passing in radius in there so that we can end up finding out what this actually is? Yes, we could. So let's go ahead and let's run this code. Let's see what we come up with here. So provide a color. So let's go with red. Now it says provide a number. Let's go 65. And then next, once I press enter, we're going to end up seeing printed out what data type this is. Now it's also going to throw us an error here because I'm telling you that we actually currently do not have the correct data type. So as you can see, we've got the type error here, and that's because it's a string value. And so if I go up here, as you can see, we printed out that this was a string data type. Now that is incorrect. We don't want it to be a string data type. And so what can we do? We need to switch this to an integer. So what we can do is we can use a built-in function in Python, which is the int function. Now int, what is int going to do? Int will convert whatever is in the parentheses to an integer, right? So it started off as being a string here where we had 67 or whatever we had put it in there, right? And that was a string. The int function is going to change that to be an integer. And so then now we can end up using this, and it'll actually create the radius for us here. So that circle with that radius. Now let's go ahead, let's just test this out here. We are missing one of the steps, but I just want to test the functionality of being able to create a radius, the correct radius of a circle. So let's go ahead and let's go with 90 pixels for the radius, and let's bring up our little Python guy. So we've got 90 in there. Okay, so kind of keep in mind how big that was. Let's go next. Let's make it a little bit smaller. Let's go 50. So we're gonna end up doing something red, and then we do 50, and then now what we should notice is that it's a smaller circle, and yes, it absolutely is. So that is good. Now one of the things we figured out was that radius. However, they also say that we should have the correct line color as well, right? And we should be using this inputted color here. Now here's what we don't want to do. This circle should have this line color that we use, right? So what we don't want to do is go ahead and put down here, okay, painter.color, and then, you know, we can put the color in there, right? Is that what we want? No. So not only should this be instead of color, should it be pen color, but it should also be sure to be before we create the circle, right? If we change that pen color after we've created the circle, is the color of the circle going to actually be the specific color? No, this needs to happen first. First, we need to get the correct pen color, then we can create the circle so that it has that correct pen color, okay? So let's go ahead and let's test this out. So we're going to run this. Let's put down red, and then let's go ahead and put in 72. So now I'm going to click on this, and then now you can see that we've got a red circle that was created with a radius of 72 pixels. Now what we want to do is let's run this again. Let's give it a different option. So let's go blue, and then let's go 143. Now if we end up bringing this up, perfect. As you can see, it used blue, and it also made the radius be 143 pixels. Okay, so this is just a little introduction on how we can use input in the Turtle module, and also the data types. Please be very, very careful on this activity with your data types. If you need anything that needs to be an integer, please make sure that you are using the int function. All right. Hope that was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. If you got any questions, drop them in the comments. And as always, like and subscribe. Catch y'all later. Happy coding. Bye-bye.